The alarm sounded through the ship at exactly 600 hours. Captain Minu opened his eyes and sat up in his bunk. He had been awake for 10 minutes already, but he liked to rest a bit longer before the day began. The Spride was 3 months into its exploration mission, and every day brought something new. Minu walked to the bridge, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. His ship was small compared to the massive vessels other species used. Humans were new to space travel, at least compared to the other races in the galaxy. Earth had only joined the Galactic Coalition 5 years ago. "Morning, Captain," said from her station. She was the chief engineer, a woman who could fix anything with whatever she had on hand. Minu had seen her repair a broken engine using spare parts from a food processor once. "Anything interesting?" Minu asked. "Just the usual. Stars, empty space, more stars," replied with a smile. "Oh, and we have an incoming message. Priority 1. Minu raised his eyebrows. Priority 1 messages were rare. They meant something important, maybe even dangerous. He moved to the communication station and pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. A strange creature appeared, made entirely of what looked like purple crystal. Its body caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the walls. This was one of the more peaceful species in the galaxy. "Human Vessel's Pride, this is representative of the Galactic Coalition. We require your immediate assistance." Minu leaned forward. The Coalition never asked humans for help. Most alien species were afraid of humans. Earth was what they called a Class 12. The gravity was too strong, the weather too violent, and the diseases too deadly. The fact that intelligent life had evolved there at all seemed impossible to most aliens. "This is Captain Minu. What do you need?" The crystal being seemed to shimmer, which Minu had learned meant it was nervous. "The Void Swarm has breached our outer rim defenses. We need evacuation support for Research Station Kela 9. It houses 3,000 civilians." Minu felt his chest tighten. He had heard about the Void Swarm. Everyone had. They were creatures from outside the galaxy, a hive mind that consumed everything in their path. The Coalition had sent 5 battle fleets to stop them. All 5 had been destroyed. "Why us?" Minu asked. "We're just an exploration ship." "Your ship is the closest vessel to the station. Every military ship we have is engaged in combat. We simply need transport. Please, Captain. 3,000 lives depend on this." Minu looked at, she nodded. He pressed the intercom button. "Report to the bridge immediately." 2 minutes later, his pilot arrived. Was young, barely 25, but he could fly anything. Was older, a kind woman who loved studying alien life more than anything else. Minu explained the situation. Grinned, which was his usual reaction to danger. Looked worried but determined. "It's a 12-hour flight at maximum speed," said. "I can get us there in 10 if you don't mind some rough flying." "Do it," Minu said. He turned back to the screen. "Representative, we accept. Send us the coordinates." The crystal being seemed to glow brighter. "Thank you, Captain. You don't know what this means to us." The screen went dark. Minu stood and looked at his small crew. 4 people total on this ship. 4 humans going to rescue 3,000 aliens from an enemy that had destroyed entire fleets. "Well said, at least it won't be boring." The journey took exactly 10 hours. Pushed the engines harder than the ship's designers had ever intended. The Sprite shook and groaned, but it held together. Stayed in the engine room the whole time, making sure nothing broke. When they arrived at the station, Minu's blood turned cold. The station was under attack. Hundreds of dark shapes swarmed around it like insects around a light. These were the Void Swarm, creatures that looked like they were made of living shadow and sharp edges. "They weren't supposed to be here yet," whispered. "The message said we had time." "Plans change," Minu said. "Get us closer. I need shields at maximum. Contact the station. Tell them we're here." The ship dove into the battle. Hands moved across the controls like he was playing music. The ship twisted and turned, dodging the swarm creatures that tried to grab them. Every few seconds, something would slam into their shields, making the whole ship shake. His voice came through the speakers. "Captain, I have the station commander. It's bad. Their defenses are failing. They have maybe 2 hours before the swarm breaks through." "Tell them to start evacuation procedures," Minyu ordered. "We're coming in." "Captain," the station commander's voice crackled through the speakers. It belonged to a prill, a species that looked like small blue bears. "You can't land. The docking bay is compromised. The swarm is already inside." Minyu thought fast. "How many docking bays do you have?" "5, but 4 are damaged or destroyed." "Which one has the least damage?" "Bay 3, but it's venting atmosphere. Nothing can dock there safely." Turned in his chair, that crazy grin still on his face. "Captain, I can do it." "You'll kill us all," the station commander said. "Not if I'm flying," replied. Minyu made his decision. "Do it." The next few minutes were the most terrifying of Minyu's life. Flew the ship through enemy fire, through debris, through the vacuum of space where the station's hull had been torn open. He brought the ship into a docking bay that was half destroyed, spinning the vessel at the last second to match the station's rotation. They landed with a hard thump. Everyone on the bridge was thrown forward in their seats, but they were down. They were alive. "See," said Easy. Minyu unbuckled his harness and stood. "Seal the bay as best you can. Find out where the civilians are gathered. Keep the engines warm. We might need to leave in a hurry." He grabbed his sidearm and headed for the airlock. Through the windows, he could see the swarm creatures moving in the station's corridors. They were inside, and they were getting closer. The rescue mission had begun, and Minyu knew that before this was over, the galaxy would see what humans could do when someone needed help, whether the aliens were ready for that or not. The station's air tasted like metal and fear. Minyu stepped through the airlock and onto the main deck of Research Station Kela 9. The lights flickered above him, and somewhere in the distance, he could hear screaming. A small group of aliens waited near the docking bay. They represented different species from across the galaxy. Some looked like insects, others like plants, and a few reminded Minyu of animals from Earth. All of them looked terrified. A tall, thin alien stepped forward. It had 6 legs and skin that changed colors as it moved. "Captain Minyu, I am Station Commander. Thank the stars you came." "How much time do we have?" Minyu asked. "The swarm has breached sectors 7 through 12. Our security forces are dead or dying. We estimate 30 minutes before they reach the civilian shelters." 30 minutes? 3,000 people to evacuate in 30 minutes. Minyu felt his heart pound, but he kept his face calm. Fear was contagious, especially in a crisis. "Where are the civilians now?" "Main shelter level 4. But the elevators are down. The only way there is through the maintenance shafts." "Then we use the maintenance shafts." Minyu pressed his communicator. "I need you out here. Bring the emergency equipment." Arrived 3 minutes later carrying a heavy pack of tools and supplies. She looked around the damaged station and whistled. "Well, this is a mess." "Can you get the elevators working?" Minyu asked. Walked to the nearest elevator panel and pulled it open. Inside was a tangle of wires and circuits, half of them melted or broken. She studied it for a moment, then shook her head. "Not with this damage, but I can do something else." She pulled out a small device from her pack. "I can override the emergency shaft doors. We can climb down." Commander made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. "Climb. The shaft is 40 meters deep. My people can't climb that far." "Then we'll lower them," Minyu said. "How much cable do we have on the ship?" "Enough," she grinned. "I'll make it work." While set up the climbing system, Minyu, and went to assess the civilian shelters. They took a service corridor, moving quickly through the dim light. Twice they heard the swarm creatures nearby, sounds like metal scraping on stone. Touched Minyu's arm and pointed. Through a window, they could see into one of the station's main corridors. The swarm was there, dozens of them, moving like a dark wave through the hallway. They had bodies like insects, but wrong somehow, with too many legs and eyes that glowed with purple light. "They're hunting," whispered. "Look at how they move. They're searching for life." "Can they sense us?" "I don't know. Maybe we should move." They reached the civilian shelter 10 minutes later. The doors were heavy and sealed tight. Minyu pressed the intercom button. "This is Captain Minyu of the human ship's Pride. We're here to evacuate you." The door opened a crack and a small, round alien peeked out. This was a Prill, the same species as the station commander. It looked like a blue teddy bear with big eyes and soft fur. "Human," it squeaked. "You came." "We came. How many are in there?" 3,042. 17 species, many children. Minyu felt the weight of those numbers. Over 3,000 lives depending on him and his tiny crew. He pushed the feeling aside and focused on the problem. "We're setting up an evacuation route through the maintenance shaft. Start organizing everyone. The strongest first, then the weak, then the children. We'll carry anyone who can't climb." The next 20 minutes were chaos. Got the cable system working and aliens started climbing down the shaft toward the docking bay. Some could climb on their own. Others needed help. A few were too weak or too young. That's when things got complicated. His voice crackled over the communicator. "Captain, we have a problem. The swarm found us. They're attacking the ship." Minyu cursed. "How many?" "Too many. I'm sealing the hatches, but they're trying to break through. You need to hurry." Was helping a group of elderly aliens toward the shaft when the shelter's alarm went off. Red lights flashed and a mechanical voice announced, "Hull breach detected. Sector 4. Evacuate immediately." Sector 4, that was where they were. "They're here," said quietly. Minyu looked around. There were still hundreds of aliens in the shelter, waiting their turn to escape. Children huddled with their parents. The elderly sat against the walls, too tired to stand. If the swarm broke through now, they would all die. "Keep moving," Minyu ordered. "Everyone who can climb, go now, don't wait." He pulled out his weapon and moved toward the shelter entrance. He could hear them now, the swarm getting closer. The sound of their legs scraping on metal made his skin crawl. Appeared beside him, holding a piece of heavy pipe. "I'm not letting you stand here alone. You need to get those people out. The system is automatic, they don't need me. They need you, so I'm staying." Before Minyu could argue, the door exploded inward. 3 swarm creatures rushed through, moving faster than anything that size should move. They were each the size of a large dog, covered in black armor, with claws that looked sharp enough to cut steel. Minyu fired his weapon. The energy bolt hit the first creature in what passed for its head. It stumbled but didn't fall. These things were tough. Swung her pipe and hit the second creature hard enough to send it flying backward. She was breathing hard, but she was smiling. "Come on, you ugly bugs." The third creature jumped at Minyu. He dodged to the side and fired again, this time hitting it in the leg. It screeched, a sound like breaking glass, and fell. But more were coming. Minyu could see them through the broken door, a wave of darkness and claws. "We can't hold them," said. "We have to," Minyu replied. That's when something unexpected happened. A group of aliens, the ones who had already been evacuated and were supposed to be safe on the ship, came running back. They were carrying tools, pipes, anything they could use as weapons. "We fight too," one of them said. "It was a species that looked like walking crystals. You came to save us, we help save others." Minyu wanted to tell them to go back, to stay safe, but he saw the determination in their eyes. These people had been running for so long, hiding from the swarm. Now they had a chance to fight back. "Form a line," Minyu ordered. "Don't let them through." The battle that followed would be talked about for years in the quiet bars where veterans gathered. A human captain and engineer, fighting alongside aliens who had never known war, holding a line against impossible odds. They fought for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of chaos and violence, of sweat and blood and fear. Minyu lost count of how many swarm creatures they killed. His weapon overheated twice. His pipe bent from the impacts. But they held the line. Every civilian made it to the evacuation shaft. Every single one. When the last alien child was safely climbing down toward the ship, Minyu and finally fell back. They were covered in cuts and bruises, exhausted beyond measure. "Go," Minyu told the aliens who had fought beside them. "Get to the ship, now." They ran. Minyu and were the last ones in the shaft, climbing down as fast as they could. Above them, they could hear the swarm pouring into the empty shelter. They made it to the docking bay just as was closing the ship's outer door. Everyone was aboard, packed into the cargo bay and corridors. 3,042 aliens plus 4 humans, all crammed into a ship designed for a crew of 20. "Get us out of here," Minyu shouted. Didn't need to be told twice. The ship's engines roared to life, and they tore away from the station. Swarm creatures clung to the hull, trying to break through, but spun the ship in a wild maneuver that threw them off into space. As they flew away, Minyu watched through the window as the station exploded. The swarm had breached the reactor. Fire bloomed in the darkness, and then there was nothing. But 3,042 people were alive. Against all odds, they had saved them all. In the cargo bay, the aliens were silent. They looked at the 4 humans who had risked everything to save them. They had heard stories about humans, about the dangerous from Earth. They had been afraid. Now they understood. Humans weren't dangerous because they wanted to hurt others. They were dangerous because they refused to give up, even when the situation seemed hopeless. One small Prill child walked up to and hugged her leg. "Thank you, human." Picked up the child and held it close, tears in her eyes. "You're welcome, little one." And in that moment, everything changed. The Pride limped through space toward the nearest coalition fleet. The ship was never designed to carry this many passengers. Every corridor was filled with aliens sitting on the floor, trying to rest. The air recyclers worked overtime, struggling to keep up with the demand. Minyu stood on the bridge, looking at the tactical display. The Void Swarm wasn't just attacking research stations anymore. They were pushing deeper into coalition space, destroying everything in their path. 12 colonies had fallen in the past week. Military losses were catastrophic. Captain said, "We're getting another transmission. It's from the Coalition Fleet Command." The screen lit up, showing a large, insect-like alien with compound eyes and mandibles. This was Admiral, one of the Coalition's top military leaders. "Captain Minyu, we have received your refugees. Well done on the rescue operation. However, we need your ship elsewhere." Minyu frowned. "Admiral, with respect, we need repairs. Our ship is barely holding together." "I understand, but the situation is desperate. The Void Swarm has a central hive ship. All the smaller creatures are controlled from there. If we can destroy the hive ship, the entire swarm will fall apart." "And you want us to help how?" The Admiral's mandibles clicked together nervously. "Every attack on the hive ship has failed. It's too well defended. We can't get close enough, but we need someone to board it to plant explosives at its core." Silence filled the bridge. Boarding the hive ship. The idea was insane. It would mean going inside the swarm's home, surrounded by millions of hostile creatures in an environment designed to kill intruders. "Admiral," Minyu said slowly, "you're asking us to commit suicide." "I'm asking you to save the galaxy. We've analyzed your species. Humans have higher tolerance for radiation, toxic environments, and physical stress than any known species. If anyone can survive inside that ship, it's you." Laughed bitterly from her station. That's a nice way of saying we're the only ones crazy enough to try. The Admiral didn't deny it. Will you help us? Minyu looked at his crew, was grinning again the way he always did when things got dangerous, looked tired but determined, was checking her medical supplies, already preparing for the worst. If we do this, Minyu said, we need support, ships to cover our approach, weapons, a way out when the job is done. You'll have everything we can provide. And if we succeed, the Coalition stops treating humans like monsters. We get equal status, equal respect. The Admiral paused, then slowly nodded. Agreed. Your species will be fully recognized as equals in the Coalition. Then we'll do it. Send us the coordinates. 2 hours later, Minyu gathered a team. Besides the original crew he brought in Sara, had been a soldier on Earth before joining the space program. He was quiet, efficient, and deadly when he needed to be. Sara was the ship's medical officer, a woman who could keep people alive in situations that should kill them. The 6 humans stood in the cargo bay, checking their equipment. They wore environmental suits designed for human use, much heavier and tougher than what other species used. They carried weapons, explosives, and enough supplies for a one-way trip. The Prill child who had hugged earlier watched from the doorway. Her name was, and she had appointed herself Shadow. You're leaving? Asked in a small voice. Knelt down to the child's level. We have to, but we'll come back, I promise. Humans always keep promises. We try our best. Reached into her fur and pulled out a small stone, smooth and blue. This is my lucky rock. It kept me safe. Maybe it will keep you safe too. Took the stone with trembling hands. Thank you, I'll bring it back to you. The team boarded a small assault shuttle, would pilot them in, and the Coalition fleet would provide covering fire. It was a simple plan, which meant it would probably go wrong in complicated ways. They launched an hour later. The hive ship was massive, bigger than any station or vessel Minyu had ever seen. It looked organic, like a giant insect, with a hull that seemed to pulse and breathe. Around it swarmed thousands of smaller creatures, forming a defensive cloud. That's a lot of angry bugs, said calmly. Coalition fleet is engaging, reported. They're drawing the defenders away from our approach vector. We have a window, but it's small. The shuttle dove toward the hive ship. Explosions lit up the space around them as Coalition ships fought the swarm. Flew like a madman, dodging energy blasts and collision courses with a skill that made it look easy. They hit the hive ship's hull with a thud that rattled everyone's teeth. Was already moving, pulling out cutting tools to breach the hull. The metal under her tools was strange, more like hardened flesh than steel. It's biological, said, fascinated despite the danger. The whole ship is alive. Great, Sora muttered. We're cutting into a living thing that won't make it angry at all. The hull opened with a hiss of escaping air. Inside was darkness and a smell like rotting flowers. Minyu went in first, weapon ready. His helmet light cut through the gloom, revealing corridors that looked more like intestines than hallways. The team moved carefully through the hive ship. Everything was wrong here. The gravity shifted randomly. The walls moved slightly, like they were breathing. Sounds echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Radiation levels are increasing, Sara reported. We're at 3 times what would kill most species. Humans can handle it, but we can't stay here long. They went deeper. Twice they encountered swarm creatures and had to fight. Moved through the battles like a ghost, his movements precise and lethal. The creatures fell, but more kept coming. They know we're here, said. They're organizing. How much farther to the core? Minyu asked. Checked her scanner. 200 meters down through that passage. The passage was narrow and dark. They had to move single file, with barely enough room to squeeze through. Halfway down, the walls began to close. It's alive and it's trying to crush us, shouted. Move, move. They ran. The walls pressed in from both sides, getting end. Minyu felt his suit scrape against the organic metal. Behind him, someone screamed, but they kept moving. They burst out into a large chamber just as the passage sealed shut behind them. Everyone was breathing hard, checking for injuries. They had made it, all 6 of them. In the center of the chamber was the core. It looked like a massive brain, purple and pulsing, connected to thousands of cables that ran throughout the ship. This was the intelligence that controlled the swarm. "Plant the explosives," Minyu ordered. "We have 10 minutes before the timer activates." But before they could move, something spoke, not in words but directly into their minds. The sensation was like ice water pouring into their skulls. "Why do you resist? We only seek food, RESOURCES, survival." Stumbled, holding her head. "It's communicating. The swarm intelligence is trying to talk to us." "Leave US. We will consume your galaxy and move on. Resistance is pointless." "It's afraid," said, her voice filled with wonder. "Can't you feel it? It's not evil. It's desperate and afraid." Minyu moved closer to the core, his weapon still raised but not firing. Afraid of what? Images flooded their minds. A galaxy far away, consumed by something worse than the swarm. Darkness that ate stars. The swarm fleeing, desperate, starving, looking for a new home. "They come behind us. The hollow ONES, they consume all. We flee or we die." "There's something else out there," Minyu said. "Something worse. The swarm isn't invading, it's running away." Kept his weapon trained on the core. "Does it matter? They're still killing our people." "Maybe it does matter," said. She stepped forward, her hands open and empty. "What if we could help each other? What if there's another way?" "Help, you are prey, we are predator. There is no other way." "There's always another way," Minyu said. He lowered his weapon. "Humans know something about running away. Our whole species almost died multiple times. Ice ages, plagues, disasters. We survived because we adapted. We learned to work together, even with things that were different from us." "You would help US, WHY. Because maybe the real enemy isn't you, it's whatever you're running from." Minyu looked at his team. "And because that's what humans do. We don't give up and we don't leave people behind, even if those people are giant space bugs." The core pulsed, its color shifting from purple to blue. "What do you propose?" And in that moment, Minyu made a choice that would change the fate of the galaxy. Instead of detonating the explosives, he made an offer, a treaty, a chance for peace. The swarm intelligence considered for a long moment. Then it agreed to a ceasefire. Not surrender, but a pause. A chance to talk, to negotiate, to find a better solution. When Minyu and his team emerged from the hive ship, the coalition fleet was ready to fire the killing blow. Minyu broadcast on all channels explaining what they had learned, about the hollow ones, about the swarm's desperation, about the chance for peace. The fleet admiral was furious, but had already broadcast everything to the public channels. Millions of civilians across the galaxy heard Minyu's words. They heard about mercy, about understanding, about finding another way. The coalition couldn't refuse, not without looking like the monsters. But as the ceasefire took hold, sensors picked up something new at the edge of the galaxy. Ships, thousands of them, not organic like the swarm but cold metal, ancient, unstoppable. The hollow ones had arrived. The real war was just beginning. The hollow ones came like a dark tide across the stars. Their ships were made of a metal so dense that nothing could penetrate it. Each vessel was a perfect geometric shape, cold and lifeless. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They simply destroyed everything in their path. Minyu stood in the coalition command center, watching the tactical display. 3 colonies had fallen in 2 days. Every defense the coalition threw at the hollow ones failed. Energy weapons bounced off their hulls. Missiles exploded harmlessly. Even the swarm's biological weapons did nothing. "They're machines," said, studying the sensor data. "But not just machines, there's something else. I'm detecting faint organic signatures inside the ships. Very faint, very old. Admiral clicked his mandibles in frustration. It doesn't matter what they are. We can't stop them. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds in a month. We're looking at total extinction. The door opened and a human walked in. He was older than Minu, with gray hair and tired eyes. This was Earth's ambassador to the Coalition. Captain Minu said, "I bring news from Earth. After monitoring this crisis, the government has made a decision. We're sending help." "How much help?" Admiral asked. "A fleet, 30 ships, every vessel we can spare." The Admiral's mandibles drooped. 30 ships? We've lost 100 times that many. Your gesture is appreciated, but it won't be enough. Smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Admiral, you don't understand. These aren't ordinary ships. They're crewed by humans, every single one." The room fell silent. 30 ships didn't sound like much. But 30 ships full of humans, full of people who came from a world that tried to kill them every day, who learned to thrive in conditions that would destroy other species. That was different. "They'll be here in 4 days," continued. "Until then, Captain Minu will coordinate defensive operations. Earth has also sent plans for new weapons, human weapons." Minu looked at the data handed him. His eyes widened. These weren't elegant energy weapons like the Coalition used. These were crude, violent, and brilliant. Kinetic weapons that used raw force, nuclear warheads, chemical explosives, things that seemed primitive but might actually work against the hollow ones. "We need to test these," Minu said. "Find out what hurts them." Over the next 3 days, Minu and his team worked constantly. They barely slept, barely ate, worked with Coalition engineers to retrofit ships with human weapons, trained alien soldiers in human combat tactics, teaching them aggression and unpredictability instead of their orderly formations. Sara prepared medical stations for the casualties they knew were coming. Spent her time studying the Hollow Ones, trying to understand them. She worked with the Swarm intelligence, sharing data, looking for weaknesses. The Swarm had fought the Hollow Ones before and lost, but they had learned things. "They were once organic," announced at a strategy meeting. "Millions of years ago they were living beings, but they uploaded themselves into machines to become immortal. Something went wrong. The machines corrupted them. They forgot who they were. Now they just consume, trying to fill a void they don't even understand they have." "Can we fix them?" Minu asked. "I don't know, maybe. If we could reach whatever organic part is still inside their ships." On the 4th day, the human fleet arrived. Minu went to meet them, taking a shuttle to the flagship. It was called Indomitable, and it lived up to its name. The ship was ugly compared to sleek Coalition vessels, all armor and weapons with no wasted space on aesthetics. The fleet commander was a woman named. She was short, muscular, and had a scar across her left cheek. She shook Minu's hand with a grip that could crush stone. "Captain Minu, I've heard about what you did. Saved 3,000 aliens, made peace with the Swarm, and now you're trying to save the whole galaxy. Typical human overachieving." Minu laughed for the first time in days, just trying to help. "Well, you've got help now. 30 ships, 5,000 crew, and enough weapons to crack a planet. Tell us where you need us." The battle plan was complex. The Coalition fleet would engage the Hollow Ones directly, using human weapons to test their defenses. The Swarm would attack from another angle, trying to overwhelm their sensors. And Minu's team would do what they did best: attempt the impossible. They would board one of the Hollow One ships and try to reach the organic core. If was right, if there was still something living inside those machines, maybe they could communicate. Maybe they could stop this war. The battle began at dawn, though dawn meant nothing in space. The human fleet dove into combat with a ferocity that shocked the Coalition observers. Earth ships didn't dance elegantly like Coalition vessels. They brawled, getting close and hitting hard. Piloted Minu's team toward the largest Hollow One ship. Behind them, space was full of explosions and weapons fire. The coalition ships were taking heavy losses, but the human weapons were working. Kinetic rounds punched through shields. Nuclear warheads cracked armor. "They're not invincible," said. "They just fought enemies who relied on energy weapons. We're hitting them with raw force. It's working." The boarding operation was violent. Cut through the hollow one ship's hull with plasma torches while enemy defenses tried to kill them. Sora kept everyone alive despite injuries. They breached the hull and entered a nightmare. Inside the ship was cold, so cold that frost formed on their suits. The corridors were geometric and perfect, lit by blue light that hurt to look at. Machines moved through the hallways, not the organic creatures of the swarm, but mechanical soldiers with no emotion, no mercy. Fought them with a combination of human weapons and pure aggression. He moved through their formations like water, disrupting their perfect patterns with chaos. The machines couldn't predict him. Their programming was too orderly. They went deeper. The cold got worse. Sora reported that the temperature was -100 degrees. Any other species would be dead. Humans could survive it barely with their suits. Finally, they reached the core. It was different from the swarm's organic brain. This was a crystal matrix, glowing with ancient light, and suspended in the center, preserved in some kind of stasis, was a small organic form. It looked almost human, but not quite. An alien from millions of years ago, uploaded and forgotten. "I can communicate with it," said, "but I need to connect directly, physical contact." "That could kill you," Sora warned. "It might, but if I don't try, we all die anyway." Reached out and touched the crystal. Light exploded through the chamber. Images flooded into her mind, into all their minds. They saw a civilization at its peak, afraid of death, choosing to upload themselves. They saw the corruption, the slow forgetting of what it meant to be alive. They saw the hunger, the endless consumption, trying to fill a void that couldn't be filled. And they saw despair. The organic mind inside the crystal was still there, still aware, trapped in a nightmare it couldn't escape. It had been screaming for millions of years, but the machines couldn't hear. Spoke not with words, but with feelings. She showed the trapped mind what life was. She showed it Earth with all its danger and beauty. She showed it the choice to live, truly live, even if it meant accepting death someday. "You can stop," whispered. "You can rest. It's okay to let go." The mind in the crystal hesitated. Then slowly it agreed, not to surrender but to stop fighting, to accept peace. The hollow one ship went dark. Its weapons stopped firing. The machines inside became still. Across the battlefield, other hollow one ships began to slow. The organic minds inside them, connected through some ancient network, heard what the first mind had chosen. One by one, they stopped fighting. Not all of them. Some were too far gone, too corrupted. Those ships kept attacking and had to be destroyed. But most simply went quiet, drifting in space, finally at rest after millions of years. The battle was over. The galaxy was saved. But the cost was heavy. 20 coalition ships destroyed, 5 human vessels lost, thousands dead, and who had connected with the hollow one mind was changed. She would recover, Sora said, but she would never be quite the same. Minyu stood on the bridge of this pride and looked at the stars. They had won. Humanity and the coalition and even the swarm, working together, had defeated an enemy that should have been unstoppable. Contacted him from the Coalition Command Center. "Captain Minyu, the Coalition Council wants to meet with you. They're ready to honor their agreement. Humanity will have a seat on the ruling council. Equal status, equal voice." "Good," Minyu said. "We earned it." "You did more than that. You showed them what humans really are. Not monsters, not just warriors, but people who refuse to give up, who choose compassion even in war, who make the impossible happen through sheer determination." Minyu thought about the refugees they'd saved, the peace they'd made with the swarm, the mercy they'd shown the hollow ones. He thought about his crew, battered and exhausted but still standing. "We just did what needed to be done," he said. "That's what makes you special," replied. "You see what needs to be done and you do it, no matter how impossible it seems. That's the human way, and the galaxy is better for it." As the transmission ended, Little ran onto the bridge. The Prill child had appointed herself part of the crew. She held up's lucky stone, the blue rock she had given before the mission. "You brought it back," she said happily. "I knew you would. Humans always keep their promises." Minyu smiled and picked up the child. Through the window, he could see human ships and coalition vessels, and even some swarm bioships flying together in formation. 3 species that should have been enemies, now working as allies. The galaxy had changed, and it was only the beginning. 6 months after the war ended, Minyu stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Coalition. It was a massive building on the Coalition's capital world, with walls made of crystal that showed the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered here to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. Today was special. Today, humanity would officially join the Coalition Council. Minyu wore his dress uniform, clean and pressed for the first time in months. Beside him stood Ansara. His crew, his friends, the people who had helped save the galaxy. They all looked uncomfortable in formal clothes. They were more used to grease stains and combat gear than medals and ceremonies. "I hate speeches," whispered. "Can't we just skip to the part where we leave?" "Respect the ceremony," Minyu whispered back. "These people are honoring us. These people thought we were monsters 6 months ago. And now they know better." The hall fell silent as walked to the center platform. The human ambassador looked different today, standing tall and proud. For years, he had argued for humanity's place in the galaxy. For years, he had been dismissed and ignored. Not anymore. "Members of the Galactic Coalition," began, his voice carrying through the hall. "We gather today to recognize a new species as full members of our community. Humanity has proven itself not through conquest or aggression, but through sacrifice and compassion. They saved lives when it seemed impossible. They made peace where others saw only war. They showed mercy to enemies who deserved none." Admiral stood, his insect body catching the light. "I will not lie. I was wrong about humans, we all were. We saw them as dangerous, unpredictable, violent. We were afraid of them because they came from us. We thought their strength made them cruel." The Admiral's voice grew stronger. "But we learned the truth. Their strength comes from their world, yes, but their compassion comes from their hearts. They are strong because they had to be. They are kind because they choose to be. That combination makes them something we have never seen before." Other representatives stood, one by one, adding their voices. The Prills spoke about the refugees saved. They talked about fighting alongside humans against the swarm. Even representatives from the swarm itself, now allied with the coalition, shared their gratitude. Finally, it was Minyu's turn to speak. He walked to the platform, his heart pounding. He had faced death, fought impossible battles, stared down extinction. But public speaking still made him nervous. "Thank you," he said simply. "Humans don't need fancy words, so I'll keep this short. We're honored to join the coalition. We'll work hard, fight fair, and do our best to make the galaxy a better place. That's all we can promise, but we always keep our promises." The hall erupted in applause. It started with the rescued refugees, then spread to the military personnel who had fought alongside humans, then to everyone else. The sound was like thunder. As Minyu returned to his seat, ran up and hugged him. The little Prill had grown in 6 months, but she was still small enough to hug a human's legs. "You did good," she squeaked. "Now can we get food? I'm hungry." Everyone laughed. The ceremony continued with more speeches and formal agreements, but the important part was done. Humanity was recognized. Humanity belonged. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Aliens from dozens of species mingled, sharing food and stories. Minyu found himself surrounded by beings who wanted to thank him, to meet him, to simply be near the humans who had changed everything. Was in the corner, deep in conversation with coalition engineers. They were sharing designs, learning from each other. Human ingenuity combined with alien technology was creating innovations no one had thought possible. Was demonstrating flight maneuvers to a group of young alien pilots. They watched in amazement as he described turns and tricks that their species physically couldn't survive. But they learned anyway, adapting what they could. Stood with a group of soldiers, showing them human combat techniques, not to make them more violent but to make them more effective, to help them survive the next crisis, whatever it might be. Sora was teaching medical personnel about human resilience, about how to treat injuries that would kill other species. She was sharing knowledge that would save lives across the galaxy. And sat with from a dozen species, showing them her research on the swarm and the hollow ones. Together, they were working to rehabilitate the remnants of both species, to give them new purpose. But the most important conversation happened in a quiet corner, away from the crowds. Approached Minyu with a serious expression. "Captain, we have a problem." Minyu's good mood faded. "What kind of problem?" "A good problem, actually. Since the war ended, dozens of species have asked for human assistance. Rescue operations, engineering projects, conflict mediation. Everyone wants humans on their team now." "That's good, isn't it?" "It is, but we don't have enough people. Earth can't send unlimited crews into space. We need to be selective about where we help." Minyu thought about this. 6 months ago, nobody wanted humans around. Now everyone did. The change was dizzying. "We help where the need is greatest," Minyu said. "We teach others to do what we do. We share our knowledge, our techniques, our way of thinking. That way they won't always need us." Smiled. "That's exactly what I told the council." They agreed to create a new organization, the Unified Response Corps. Humans will lead it, but it will include volunteers from every species. We'll teach them the human way, never give up, adapt to anything, show compassion even to enemies. "Will it work?" "I don't know, but we have to try." Over the next hour, Minyu was introduced to aliens who wanted to join this new corps. They came from species that had never known war, species that were fragile and weak by human standards. But they all had one thing in common. They had seen what humans could do, and they wanted to help. A young maid of purple crystal approached nervously. "Captain Minyu, I want to join the Response Corps. I know I'm not strong like humans. I break easily, but I can learn. I can try." Minyu looked at this fragile being who wanted to be brave like humans. He thought about all the challenges ahead, all the dangers. He thought about how easy it would be to discourage this young alien, to keep them safe. But that wasn't the human way. "What's your name?" Minyu asked. Being human isn't about being strong. It's about refusing to quit. It's about caring enough to try, even when the odds are against you. If you have that, then you're already thinking like a human. You're welcome on the team. Glowed brighter literally with joy. "Thank you, Captain. I won't let you down." As walked away, appeared at Minyu's side. "You know that kid is going to get hurt, right? Their species can't handle a fraction of what we can." "Probably, but they'll also do things we never thought of. Different perspectives, different abilities. That's what makes a good team." "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best." Minyu gestured at his crew, scattered around the room, each making a difference in their own way. The evening continued. Food was shared, stories were told, and friendships were formed that would last lifetimes. Representatives from former enemy species stood together as allies. The swarm's hive minds discussed philosophy with coalition scholars. The few hollow ones who chose to remain active after being freed from their corruption learned to appreciate organic life again. As the reception ended, Minyu and his crew gathered on a balcony overlooking the city. The capital world's sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that reminded them of Earth. "So what now?" asked. "We're heroes, humanity has a seat on the council, the war is over. What do we do?" "We keep going," Minyu said. "There will always be people who need help, challenges to overcome, problems to solve. That's what we do." "For the rest of our lives?" Sora asked. "For as long as we're needed." Who had been quiet since her connection with the Hollow One mind, finally spoke. "I've been thinking about what we've done. We didn't just save the galaxy. We changed it. We showed everyone that being strong doesn't mean being cruel. That mercy isn't weakness. That different species can work together if they try." "That's a nice legacy," said. "It's just the beginning," Minyu replied. "Our children will grow up in a galaxy where humans are respected, where we're seen as partners, not threats. They'll have opportunities we never dreamed of, but they'll also have responsibilities." "To keep doing what we do," said. "To keep being human in the best sense of the word." They stood together, watching the sunset, thinking about the future. In the city below, humans and aliens walked together without fear. Children of different species played in parks. Scientists from 100 worlds collaborated on projects that would benefit everyone. The galaxy had changed, and it would keep changing, growing, becoming better, because humans had shown that it was possible. Far away, on Earth, people looked up at the stars and felt proud. Their species had gone to the stars and made a difference. They had proven that coming from a dangerous world didn't make you dangerous. It made you strong enough to protect others. And throughout the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds in 1,000,000 homes, parents of every species told their children stories about the humans who saved them, about Captain Minyu and his crew, about the who became heroes. But the stories always ended the same way. They were just people who refused to give up, and that's what made them special. Now adopted unofficially by, tugged on the human sleeve. "Tell me about Earth again, about the—" Picked up the small prill and held her close. "Earth is dangerous. It has storms that can destroy cities, diseases that can kill millions, animals that can tear you apart. The gravity is so strong it would crush most species. The sun's radiation would burn others. But humans live there. Why? Because it's home. Because we learned to survive it, then thrive in it. And because all those dangers made us who we are, strong enough to help others, brave enough to face any challenge, compassionate enough to show mercy even to enemies. I want to visit Earth someday." "You will, and you'll love it, because Earth isn't just a anymore. It's the home of humanity, and humanity is part of the galaxy now." As night fell over the capital world, the stars came out. Each one represented worlds, species, civilizations that had been saved. The swarm had found a new home, peaceful and abundant. The hollow ones who remained were learning to appreciate life again. The coalition was stronger than ever, united not by fear but by hope. And somewhere in space, this pride waited for its next mission, because there would always be another mission, another challenge, another chance to prove that humans were exactly what the galaxy needed. When rescued the galaxy, the aliens stood in shock. But the shock gave way to gratitude, then respect, then love, and the galaxy was better for it. The story of humanity in space had just begun, and it would be a story worth telling for generations to come. A story of courage, compassion, and the refusal to ever give up. A story that proved the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their strength or their technology or their combat skills. It was their hope, their belief that things could always get better, their determination to make the impossible happen. That was the human way, and the galaxy would never be the same.